Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. I'm your host, Ben Stahl, and we are on episode. Can I get a drum roll, please? 50! Wow! It's crazy that we've made it this far, considering that Sarah can remember the last time we did a show in 2021 was for Loki in July. And we left off, I think, in the low 30s. So managed to pump out quite a few episodes since coming back in January. I'm really happy about that. And today, I think, is a great topic for a 50th episode. We are going to be talking about Disney Plus's Obi-Wan Kenobi, their next big Star Wars show. But before we get into all the big stuff, I should, of course, introduce the panel. So, returning from just last week, my right hand, Sarah Moore. And it's only been about 2 weeks since he was last on the show. We were also talking about a streaming series, talking about Stranger Things with Miles. Miles, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
And you know what? It's been a while since he's been on the show, but I'm glad he's here because this is someone who, as I've learned from the last 2 episodes he was on, does not hold back. It's Kyle Sinclair. Kyle, welcome back.
Hello there.
Yes. And, Kyle, that's just the perfect outfit for this episode. I have a Star Wars shirt on, but you can't really see it, and that's okay. Still in the spirit of things. So before we get into Obi-Wan, we are going to, of course, go over the usual stuff, starting with some news. So start with some Netflix stuff here. Gina Rodriguez and Zachary Levi have joined the cast of Netflix's Spy Kids reboot series. The series will be written and directed by original Spy Kids helmer Robert Rodriguez. Did anyone here ever get into that franchise? Because I know it's kind of a cult classic for some people.
I only saw the first one, I think, which was cute, but not my favorite Robert Rodriguez movie.
I've seen none.
And he's an interesting fella, doing that, jumping between that, and then stuff like Grindhouse and From Dusk Till Dawn. You don't get to see a lot of directors who can jump back and forth between family-friendly and absolute R-rated insanity like he can. But he also, of course, was a huge part of the Book of Boba Fett. So, yeah, there's some sneers going on, and that's okay because that was definitely a show. So let's talk about a movie here that is getting a big revival in a way that I don't know. We'll see how this works. But Back to the Future is becoming a Broadway musical. Oh boy, we'll see how that works. Are they just going to adapt the first film? Are they going to go all 3? I don't know. It's kind of been a weird thing to do ever since The Producers became a big hit, and I don't think that any other film to musical take has worked quite as well in the years since. I mean, we all remember or would like to forget what happened to Spider-Man on Broadway. So, yeah, anyone? Yeah. I mean, if they do actually use the 80s music, that could at least, be a nice way to tie it back in. But, yeah, I don't know. Anyone else have any takes on this?
The show lends itself more to a musical than Spider-Man did. That was kind of a long shot to begin with. But yeah, I think this could actually be really great, especially with the shift in like costuming. Going back to the 80s, that's a major musical opportunity.
It's kind of
the 80s.
I wonder if they would shift the time frame so that they do go back to the 80s instead of back to the 50s, kind of like they did with the It movie. Since the 80s are super popular right now. My 9-year-old stepdaughter is obsessed with the 80s right now. So, which I think is hilarious.
That's true. we are at that point now where, gosh, yeah, if this had been done in 2015, it would have been like perfect to go back to 85 and still have that 30-year gap.
I said 80s.
So, yeah.
Sorry. Back in the 50s.
So yeah, who knows? We'll find out. We'll find out soon enough. Let's talk some Marvel news here for a minute, because you can't go a week without hearing something from Marvel. So Kevin Feige has teased that we will finally have a greater understanding of where the MCU is heading in the coming months, and that it's going to help that Marvel Studios is going to appear at San Diego Comic-Con this year in Hall H. So they'll probably have a big old presentation. Whether or not that really clears up the air, who knows? Maybe we'll know more once we see any one of the future shows or films. But I picked this because it harkens back to something that Kyle brought up when we did the Spider-Man show, and that the MCU is getting very big and very hard to follow. And so far throughout the entirety of Phase 4, they've introduced so many different plot threads. We're now, I believe Doctor Strange put us 5 films in at this point, and by the time we were 5 films in, actually it might have been the 6th, but by this point in Phase 1, we had Avengers, and even though they only teased Thanos, that basically said to everyone, this is the ultimate goal of where we're heading with this franchise. Right now, they've got the multiverse, they've got oh my gosh, what's his name? The villain who shows up at the end of Loki. Jonathan Major's character is
He who remains,
Kang.
King.
Yeah.
That's gotta be it.
I mean, it's gotta be it, but it's like, but like, what does the multiverse have to do with it? What do the Eternals have to do with it? There's so many different threads going on right now. And it's just compounded by the television series that are also setting up major stuff, like what the heck happens at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier? What's that setting up? Because they're trying to set something up. So I do hope that we are getting through the fog of that, and that we do know where this series is, kind of headed, because it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up on. I haven't even caught up on Miss Marvel yet, despite the fact that the first episode of Miss Marvel was it's excellent. And if that show maintains that quality, it's a gem. It's a gem. But again, we'll find out. So
I'm surprised to hear that people are questioning it. To me, the end of Loki was the moment where it was like, this is where we're going. That was like seismic. I just feel like they have to do it. And Kang and He Who Remains fits perfectly in the multiverse, because every multiverse has one of him who realizes the same discovery at the same time, and they all battle each other, right? So he could be the villain in every movie and die.
It's possible. It's difficult when they're setting up like where's Eternals heading? Like, it doesn't seem to tie into that. Again, with a lot of the TV shows, like except for Loki, where does it all tie in? And again, we'll find out eventually. It's just there's so much now. There's so much more to keep up with them, and sometimes you just gotta quit Marvel and watch Obi-Wan for a few weeks.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the box office for the weekend. So, wow, what an interesting run it's had at the box office. Top Gun Maverick jumped up from 3rd all the way back to 1st, dethroning Jurassic World and narrowly beating out Elvis. And now the battle between Top Gun and Elvis right now is close. They're estimated to be only, a couple hundred apart. So we'll see how that actually turns out, by the end of the weekend. But opening at number 4, and this is the one I want to see, is the horror film The Black Phone, which is directed by Scott Derrickson. This is the film that he left Doctor Strange to make, because he said to his writing partner, I would rather make a horror film with you that I don't have to make any compromises on than make this Marvel movie that I'm going to have to make several compromises on. And I'm glad to see that that has paid off for him. The Black Phone opened at $23.37 million. Pretty good for a low-budget horror film. Dropping from 2nd to 5th is Pixar's Lightyear, with 17.66 million. Lightyear has been struggling, which is unfortunate given the pedigree behind it. This is Pixar, this is Disney. I expected families to just go out in droves to see this. You know, it's not a complete disaster, but it's definitely on the lower end for Pixar in terms of box office. And speaking of Disney, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is still in the top 10, despite it debuting on Disney Plus in the last week. It has dropped from 4th to 6th with only 1.72 million. However, it has surpassed both Captain America Civil War and Iron Man 3 to become the 8th highest grossing Marvel film in the United States, which again surprises me given its quick turnaround to Disney Plus and the fact that it's definitely not the strongest Phase 4 film. Opening at number 7 is the new film Jug Jug Geo, which is almost certainly a foreign film. It only opened in 318 theaters to 725,000, so did pretty well for itself. Once again, my favorite film of the year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is hanging in there. Dropped only one place from 7th to 8th, brought in 533,000. The fact that this film has made it to 66 million here in the United States is so encouraging. The fact that it's that little film that can hold on for so long, I just love that, because this year has been dominated by big films, big sequels, and this is the one original film that really seems to have captured audiences. Number 9, dropping 4 places from number 5, is the Bob's Burgers movie, bringing in 513,000. And again, dropping 4 places from 6 to 10, the animated feature The Bad Guys with 439,000. So yeah, some interesting stuff going on here. It's clear that after 2 weeks, audiences aren't quite as enamored with Jurassic World as they have been. And that Top Gun is just this crazy out of nowhere film that did it. It's the first film of the year to cross the 1 billion mark worldwide. I haven't seen it yet. I still have no interest in seeing it. I will probably see Jurassic World first because, again, it has dinosaurs, so that's, you know, it'll be terrible, but whatever.
And the original trio.
And the original trio is coming back. That's a nice treat, but just a wild, wild month. And this week we have, I think it's Minions 2, or just Minions: The Rise of Gru, coming to theaters. I am supremely confident that that film will absolutely knock Top Gun off and take the number 1 spot, because for whatever reason, audiences are just eating that stuff up. But yeah, that's the box office for the week. I'm surprised the Top Gun shot back up 2 places. What a week. And I am now going to whisk you away for just a moment from your regularly scheduled programming to give you a final box office update. So the box office estimates that we had for the show were almost correct. Spots 3 through 10 were actually spot on, give or take, you know, a few million here or there. But Elvis did manage to beat out Top Gun Maverick, bringing in 31.2 million to Top Gun's 29.6 million. I still think the fact that Top Gun managed to return to the number 2 spot and dethrone Jurassic World is impressive and shows just how much staying power that film has had. So that's it for the box office update for the week. And now back to the show proper. All right, and the last bit of news for the week is probably the most important bit of news for the week. So on Friday, our glorious Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, thus eliminating protections for abortions at the federal level. That same day, and I got this information via Discussing Film on Twitter, Netflix, Paramount, Comcast, Sony, Warner Brothers Discovery, Amazon, and Disney will all reimburse travel costs for employees in states that ban abortion who wish to end a pregnancy. That's a good start. I want to see that list get bigger. This is, you might say to us, stick to film. Well, guess what? Film is art. Art is political because art is life. And film and television is made by people, and these people are affected by what has happened on Friday. So, and guess what?
It get bigger? Apple is also on that list.
Awesome.
I would like to know though, what are they going to do to protect their employees' privacy to make sure that it's not, because we all know we have to be really concerned about data tracking now too, because that kind of falls under the privacy thing. So I'm just curious what they're going to do to protect their employees' privacy. I also feel like I would love to see these companies move their employees to states that are safe, or move their offices to states, but not that this isn't good, and I appreciate it, but I would definitely have loved to see some more companies just completely move out of states that do that. But
or quit donating money to a party that supports this. There's a root cause here. We're going back in time, and it is very sad that this has happened. But it's really cool to hear that, Ben. I didn't know any of that, and I'm glad to hear Apple's on the list. At least it's some acknowledgement. I like that it's a public acknowledgement as well, that something is wrong here and we need to take action. So
I've also heard Google is, and Dick's Sporting Goods.
Oh, well, I will think of that when I get my next soccer ball.
I know. So there you go.
There's also been some calls on Twitter from people to just have studios stop filming in states that support the overturn. So
I think that would be a good step too.
There's plenty that can be done.
Didn't something pull out of Georgia because of that or something? I thought something that filmed in Georgia pulled out of there.
I don't know. I know there's been calls for Disney to pull out of Georgia because the Marvel Studio stuff, a lot of their stuff films in Georgia. At least there was a period when it did. I'm not sure if they do now. But that would be a tremendous blow to the economy there if they were to pull out. So
and maybe the threat of pullout gets the state of Georgia to take action. I'm a cynical man. I believe money is what will speak loudest to make the states that don't. So, there's a lot to come on this, I'm sure.
Yep, that is unfortunately true. So that's all I'm going to say on that. But again, it's important because art is political, and these are people. And frankly, healthcare shouldn't be a political matter anyways. This is absolutely ridiculous. So that is the news for the week. Let us move on to what we've been watching, and I'll kick things off. I was organizing some stuff on my laptop last night and just had Multiverse of Madness in the background. I will say it looks good streaming on Disney Plus. It's a very beautiful looking film. But I just needed it as background noise, so, didn't need to pay attention. The most important thing this last week is on Wednesday, I got to go see John Carpenter's The Thing on the big screen. That was an absolute treat. I am absolutely sorry, though, to those who saw the Fathom Events screening of it the Sunday before, in which several theaters screened it in the wrong aspect ratio when there were all kinds of difficulties with it. My screening went off very well, and as always with all these Fathom events, it's just a delight to see these films that were made before I was born on a big screen, because that's just the way they're meant to be seen. So I've seen The Thing probably about 50 times, and this was it just felt so fresh and new seeing it like this. So that's what I got to see this week. Sarah, what have you been watching this week?
Hasn't changed too much from last week. Finished Obi-Wan. And I'm still almost, I think I have 2 episodes left of The Staircase on HBO. But we're going to go back to trying to finish up season 3 of Stranger Things so we can watch season 4.
All right.
Yeah, because that the finale for that drops, I believe, on Friday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Kyle, what have you been watching this week?
10 years of never really caring about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My wife randomly decided to get into it. And so over the last 2 months, we've been working our way through it. She just got through Endgame, and now we're about halfway through What If. And she's sad that we're almost at the end point. She has to start waiting like everyone else for it. We've also been rewatching Rick and Morty as some, eye bleach and just enjoyment. And then, of course, Kenobi.
I need to get caught up on Rick and Morty. I'm so far behind on that. Miles, what have you been watching?
For All Mankind on Apple TV. I don't know. It's just a great alternate history story about what if Russia landed first on the moon, and there's a lot of time that passes. So I'm still watching that. We are rewatching Stranger Things season 4. My wife and I do a Stranger Things podcast. So we are getting ready for volume 2. And we're still watching The Nanny, Ben. Reruns of The Nanny.
Like the 90s sitcom The Nanny?
That is correct.
Oh, wow.
When my wife was on this show 2 episodes ago, she'd never heard the "What are we watching?" question. She said, "I've been watching The Nanny." And she believed to be the only one who's ever said that.
Yep, that was a treat. That was an interesting segment on that episode. So that's what we've been watching this week.
I watched some episodes of it back in the day. It was funny.
Oh, it's held up fairly well, as Kathleen did, better than other 90s sitcoms, in my opinion.
I know. I feel like Friends was one of the worst ones. I don't know why Friends is the one that everybody loves. No offense if you like Friends, but it was not my favorite.
Yeah, we all like what we like. So that's what we've been watching. The last thing I want to say before we actually get into Obi-Wan Kenobi is, again, happy 50th episode. I can't believe it. So just a little background for those of you who may be new to this show or new-ish. The first episode was uploaded to YouTube on August 18th, 2020. And it was so basic. I did the Zoom recording. I would upload the recording to the cloud, download it onto my phone, and edit it on iMovie on my phone. Because I didn't know how long I'd be doing this. I thought this might just be a goofy little thing that would happen for a few weeks, while we were all hanging out at home during the pandemic. And in fact, the pandemic was a huge topic in that first episode, talking about how it was going to affect getting back into movie theaters and just the whole business of movie making. Sarah was there, as well as Dea. And now we've evolved into something much more. Like, I actually have opening and closing, little music themes, and I actually edit it on my laptop now, and it's much, much faster than scrolling with my thumb. So, and just thank you to everyone who's joined me on this mad endeavor, especially Sarah, because Sarah was there from the beginning. And of everyone who's been on this show, Sarah, you're the only one who has made it into double digits as far as my guests go. As of today,
I think I'm the only other one that's hosted too.
Yes. 18 episodes, including today's. And, that was just 2 months ago that you have become the first and so far only guest host. I've never had a set panel, but you've always been there, so thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you to everyone else who has joined me, whether you've been there from the beginning, like Frank and Gary and Andrea. They've all been on several episodes, up through recently. Thank you to Miles, who has, become a huge staple on this show since we've come back in January. I think this is your 5th episode, which is crazy. You're catching up.
One for the thumb.
And because he's here today, thank you to Kyle again. One of the most outspoken panelists I have ever had, which is awesome. I honestly think that I wouldn't quite have looked at Doctor Strange with quite as critical of an eye as I did had you not been on the show and really let go and rip into Boba Fett when you did, because I think we were all very much like just trying to skirt the issue of, yeah, this show isn't that great. But you were ready to dive in there. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone. And I've listened to what my panelists have said lately. I am looking into actually creating audio versions of these episodes for people who will have a better time listening to them that way. If you like to listen to this stuff on the go, as I've said before, it's just easier for me to think about these as videos because that's how I watch most of my podcasts. That's how I think about editing. I think about editing things visually. Anytime that someone swears on this show, it's easier for me to remember visually where we were at than to think about, having to listen to think, oh, where are we now? So
then you edit the video and then export the audio as a separate file. And to the future listeners, hello, audio listeners. I'm wearing Jedi robes, and that's why I'm an interesting person. You can't see it, but I look great.
I know that's the only thing that
does look great.
Yes,
that's the only thing I'm worrying about making all the past episodes audio is that there's going to be so little context with a lot of stuff that people may have had to see visually. So it'll be interesting, but I think in the long run, I think a lot of people will appreciate it and it could reach a bigger audience. But that's it. 50 episodes. Will we ever make it to 100? Who knows? Life's going to get busy again for some of us as theaters continue to reopen, because again, we're all actors. We all start to get busy. So I've got a show coming up that, is going to start taking away my time. So there's that. But now, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, I wanted to approach this show differently. I wanted to actually do the episode breakdown first before doing thoughts about the series as a whole, because the episode breakdown and as we learned with the Stranger Things episode, covers a lot of time. So, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The entire series was directed by Deborah Chow, which is unique for these Disney Plus shows. They're usually helmed by several directors over the course of a series. As of Friday, when I got this itinerary all set up, Obi-Wan has an overall score of 7.2 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes critics have it at 75%. Rotten Tomatoes audiences at 63%. So, part one, story by Stuart Beattie and Hussein Amini, teleplay by Stuart Beattie, Hussein Amini, and Joby Harold. IMDb 7.5, Rotten Tomatoes 86. This is going to be a free-for-all. Jump in with your thoughts on part one.
I'm happy to go first. I liked part one because it answered some of the key questions that I had, such as where does Obi-Wan get his food while he's in the desert? No, I'm kidding. But it was a nice introduction to where we are in terms of his progression over the 19 years between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And we're made to understand quickly that he is in the 9-year, 10-year mourning period still. He has lost his hope, lost his faith. He's not the Alec Guinness character yet. And he has given up his, the scene where he doesn't help the guy who's getting shorted change. That just breaks my heart. Ewan's acting in that is so good, because that shows that this character who we think of as always standing up for the little guy, he has made the choice to not. So that first set a good tone for me.
Yeah, I think it was a good setup. I mean, I would say for people I think it probably didn't like live up to the excitement expectations that people were, but it was a good like setup, I thought. I'm a little more patient with letting a story unfold. But I felt like Ewan did a great job of setting up where Obi-Wan was in these years we haven't seen him. I feel like the introduction of Luke and Owen, seeing where they're at, the introduction of Leia and her family, I think it just kind of it's set up well. It was very much a setup episode.
I loved that we got to go to Alderaan in this episode. And because it's a major part of Star Wars lore, but in the live action films and series, it's a planet that we have yet to really explore. So it was really good to see them, show us a little bit of what life is like on Alderaan. It does make the moment in A New Hope where it's destroyed even harder to watch, because now we finally get to understand, like, this is what they're losing. And I thought that introducing Leia in this series caught me completely off guard, because the obvious storyline that I think they could have gone with is this is going to be a show about Obi-Wan watching over Luke the entire time and how important Luke is to the galaxy. But they didn't do that. And it was just also, it's just great to see Ewan McGregor come back. For all the faults of the prequels, casting him in them was one of the best things that they did. And he tries so hard to get something great out of those films, and is one of the reasons why it's able to go back and make them watch one. It's good to see Joel Edgerton return, Jimmy Smits, just have that connection to those films. It's kind of funny seeing Joel Edgerton return, because in the years since Star Wars, he has done just plenty of amazing films. And if you only know him from Star Wars, go watch his other work, because he's done some good stuff over the years. So that's my piece on the first episode.
Yeah, the Princess Leia revelation that she's going to be a part of this was really interesting, because there's so many different lines within the original trilogy that all the lines we've dived into a million different things, every little aspect of everything. I mean, if you have the From a Certain Point of View books, you know that every single little thing is expanded upon. But to go into help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Like, we're adding a layer to that. And I was like, whoa, that is really cool that we're going to look at that, which is, I don't know that they landed that, but this first episode showed that we were going to be tackling some depth behind that line.
Are we ready to move on to part 2? All right, let's move on to part 2. Story by Stuart Beattie and Hussein Amini. Teleplay by Joby Harold. IMDb 7.3. Rotten Tomatoes 89. I'll start us off with what I think is one of the most important things this show did. We left Tatooine. One of the scariest things going into this show was just, if they had gone the route of he's going to be watching over Luke this entire series, is all right, fine. It's going to be another show where we're staying in the same place that we've just been stuck on in Star Wars for years. So getting off Tatooine's a plus, and continuing with the thread on Leia, it's just funny to me that, wow, okay, so realistically, her entire life, I know I'm going to get some pushback on this from some people, but her entire life, Leia's always been cooler than Luke.
No, that's true. I know in this is the one where they go to the city, right? And they're doing all the chase scenes and stuff. The chase scenes didn't really land. They were kind of clumsily staged. I didn't necessarily mind it, because I just, go back and watch the original trilogy as well. There's some stuff that just doesn't make sense spatially, but I know that that's a big deal with this. I thought the actress that they picked was really good. she had some great moments in this second episode where she has some insight, whether that's through the Force or not, into what Obi-Wan is feeling in these last 10 years. And that was cool to explore. The best part of this episode was in the moments where Obi-Wan and Leia were talking, and Obi-Wan's kind of snipping at her. No one's coming, or is it, maybe that's the next episode, but it's kind of interesting to see him, the downer, and Leia, who's 10. I think he literally says, "How old are you?" in this episode. So it was cool.
Yes, Vivian Lyra Blair is the actress who plays young Leia, and she's going to be a highlight of the series.
I also thought she was great. I don't know what all the haters online were talking about. I think they're all like bots, but
there are haters. I hear nothing but unanimous praise.
Oh, there was
for the
like
actress?
Super haters for her and Reva online.
There's
like
always...
Ewan McGregor even had to like record a video saying that anyone who made racist comments about Moses Ingram was no Star Wars fan of his.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there was some really weird but I thought she was great. I thought she totally got Leia's like energy from the get-go.
Oh yeah. But this episode did falter in the second half when the bounty started going out. It was kind of cool to see the meth lab, and the fact that this little spice dealer girl was actually Ewan's daughter. I was someone's daughter once. But bounty goes out, and there's a Velociraptor head bounty hunter, and there's like a Forlom dude, and Reva is standing on the roof, sees gunfire, and then spends like half the episode parkouring to it and doesn't even get to it. All the bounty hunters are inept. The Velociraptor costume was just unwieldy. It took me out of it a lot. And I do like how he had to like reach out and catch Leia as she fell. So that was a good way to like show the strain of the Force and convince her. But then he magically teleports to the bottom of the building and is there, and there's no problem. But the ending, can I just jump straight ahead to that? The ending of this episode. I think one of the major complaints that ended up coming out about Reva was that the way that she approached that ending line, that reveal. Like revealing that she knows who Anakin is and revealing it in such a like sing-song taunting way, I think did the reveal a disservice. If she had just like mentioned Lord Vader or something like that, and have Obi-Wan like put that together. Wait, I heard that on the archives in the Jedi Temple. Vader, Anakin. That would have been a lot more impactful than her like spelling it out for the audience. Anakin Skywalker's alive. I found that kind of silly. They also, I think, played their hand a little too early with the Inquisitors. They should have been introduced later. And the Grand Inquisitor in particular is done so much better in Rebels. Killing him in this episode, no one believed it because we know how he dies, and it's in another place, and he's more interesting in another series. So like, how did they take such interesting characters and make them not interesting to watch? That was kind of painful to me. I like the sort of seedy pseudo Coruscant vibe of this place, and it is a good change of pace from the desert, but it didn't have a whole lot of character. And I also want to say Haja was so great. What a great little Jedi impersonator highlight.
Yeah, he was really cool because he's that Han Solo type of character that's kind of good, kind of bad, that Star Wars wants to capture all the time, but that's a very difficult thing to do. I think that's credit to the actor. What is it? Kamal Nanjiani is that. So I like that. The Leia chase scenes and Reva running across the roof the whole time. Yes, that part was distracting, but I didn't mind it. I did mind. I'm glad you brought this up, Kyle, because I forgot that this was in the end of the second episode. I don't like the order with which we found out that Reva knows who Anakin is. if you're trying to expand this out to 6 episodes, there's actually like really rich ways to bring that up later. There's a podcast that I listen to. I just say that because this is not my idea, but it's actually way more interesting if she doesn't make that connection, and as they both talk, they both make that connection at the same time. We've got a whole episode out of that. Instead, we do it for the sake of the audience, for the sake of the people who don't understand Star Wars as much. And that's kind of a slap in the face. That's why people reacted poorly to that. I did, but I was able to get over that just because of these 2 episodes came on the same day. So I gave an overall net positive.
There's been a fair amount of that, like, spelling out for the audience, just because this series does span so many decades. But it is a little bit insulting how they just kind of like spell it out for you without trusting their audience.
One thing I do like about the ending of this episode, and it's just, it's a traditional Sith thing. I love seeing villains infighting. I love seeing, but other than that, I was, apart from where we get to see Reva go later in the series, I really was disappointed with the Inquisitors as a whole. They really brought nothing to this series, which is a shame because they also brought in some talented actors to play these characters, and ultimately they just don't do anything. And this is, I haven't even seen Rebels. I don't know the great history of these characters, but I knew enough that was like, there's so much they could do that they're not doing with them.
I don't understand the 5th brother. Like, what happened here? Because in Rebels, he is this like giant buff Spanish dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I
didn't even realize that was the same. I didn't even realize it was the same character. Okay.
He's got the same hat, and I was like, is he trying to be this character? No, he's not. No way. That doesn't make any sense. He doesn't sound anything like him. But yeah, it's the 5th brother. It's the same character.
Wow. That is really weird because they don't, not even close. And not even the demeanor either. But I mean, yeah, they definitely have way better stuff in Rebels. Ben, there's some major Rebels spoilers that I'm going to be bringing up in episode 6. You're cool with that? Just gonna rip that Band-Aid off now.
I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely cool with that because I'm well overdue to have watched Clone Wars and Rebels. But thank you for bringing it up for people who are going to be watching or listening who don't want that.
Have I not sent you my Rebels edits? I'm going to make a note to do that.
All right. I think it's a good place to move on to part 3, written by Joby Harold, Hannah Friedman, Hussein Amini, and Stuart Beattie. IMDb 7.6, Rotten Tomatoes 86. So far, fairly consistent ratings across the board with these first 3 episodes. So I'll kick us off again with one of the things I liked most about this episode, and that was Freck, the character played by Zach Braff, who transports Obi-Wan and Leia, because this is a Star Wars villain that is actually relatable to the type of people we deal with in the real world. This is the people who seem neighborly and great, and then you find out that they are, not to truly politicize this, but are voting, against the good of, most people.
In their best interest.
and who literally have that bumper sticker on their car. Like, I love that he has an Empire bumper sticker. Yeah, it's, again, art is politics.
Star Wars
but
is pretty political. Like, I mean, it doesn't really, people don't pick up on it, but it doesn't hide its politics.
Yeah.
The point of the prequel is supposed to show kids how fascism rises.
Yeah. One of the climactic lines is, so this is how democracy dies, or liberty dies.
I think about it every day.
That's why I'm surprised to hear, Sarah, you talk about the actress, of Reva and the Leia getting harassed. How can you watch Star Wars and not be part of the inclusiveness? That's the whole.
Well, I know point? it's like, it's crazy. It's mind-numbing, but we had an episode that was all about toxic fandoms, and Star Wars, unfortunately, it was like one of the most. Yeah. But like, are those, like Ewan McGregor said, are those people even really Star Wars fans, or are they just coming in trying to, like, don't know.
That is, you run the risk of a no true Scotsman fallacy there, because if you just say that like anybody who is racist is not a Star Wars fan, that's, you know, somebody can identify as a Star Wars fan if they enjoy the movies. They don't have to like agree with all the politics and or even like make that connection. But if they like Star Wars, they're a Star Wars fan. So saying that they're not true Star Wars fans is a fallacy.
Yeah,
That's rough. Go ahead, Miles.
Oh,
I think what Hugh said was, "You're no Star Wars fan of mine." That's what Ewan said.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like we spend too much time thinking about who else is Star Wars. I mean, I know Ewan was coming out in defense there, but it is so big now that you can carve your own Star Wars out. However, I don't think that you can miss the inclusivity of every alien and every type of person. Like, I mean, how can you watch it and not think that everyone has a chance? Or, you know, like, I mean, that's the whole point. 1 million aliens in a bar. It's just weird.
That's a hive of scum and villainy. The Empire is definitely racist because they only hire humans. But Star Wars, like compared to Star Trek, is very binary. It's us against them. It's good versus evil, and it's easy to identify with the hero. That's the point. And so everyone you don't like becomes the other. And like Star Trek, on the other hand, is all about the inclusivity in a way that Star Wars is not. So I can see how this happens, but yeah, it sucks, and they missed the point in my opinion.
Going off of what Kyle has just said, I wish I could remember, because this was like I think it's like a month and a half ago, I saw this great Twitter thread that explained, you know, why this has happened. And one of the reasons is when Star Wars originally released in 1977, you have, you know, a ton of young white men who see Luke Skywalker as, you know, the poor young farm boy who, you know, pulls up his bootstraps and gets it all done by himself. You know, it's all about the individual, and they didn't grasp that what, you know, the rebellion is really about a group of people who are banding together. Because, and again, a huge part of the original film is that it's a very white film. And even after the introduction of characters like Lando, Star Wars is still a very white franchise. You know, until we finally got to, and you know, it really wasn't until the sequel trilogy, which for all its faults is the most inclusive trilogy, you know, of the actual films. And so when we finally got to that, all those people who grew up thinking that, you know, Luke represented them, the individual, you know, this was their moment to flash out and say, no, this movie is, why are they not for me anymore? And it's like, well, they're for everyone. That's why.
But what's fascinating about Star Wars fans is they can't, or some Star Wars fans, the toxic Star Wars fandom, is that they can't just say, we don't like what the movie's doing. They, for some reason, have to like attack the actors on social media. That's what is really, like,
I can't make that
actors.
connection.
Come on.
I think just no matter what you do, there's just a group of people who are just horrible. Yeah. I play fantasy football. I run a fantasy football podcast. The amount of people who say, you know, screw you for getting injured. This guy broke his leg and they're tagging the guy on Twitter saying, you messed up my week. Like, people live in their own bubble, you know, sometimes.
What is that called? Protagonist syndrome?
That sounds
something like that, where they think that they're the protagonist of the story.
Yep. This episode, though, is the one where Vader snaps the guy's neck, right? And drags the person. I was really happy to see that. I think my biggest worry, besides breaking major continuity or canon, before the series, I was really worried that we would break something seriously. My major worry was that they would dial down Vader, and they really didn't. When he's just got the guy and he's just dragging him, and everyone else won't even step up. They're just watching their fellow villager being dragged, and they're like, I'm not helping him. That was really cool. I was cheering for some reason, to my wife's great concern.
I like that detail because this is the series, and it starts here, that really drives home the point that Obi-Wan makes in the original trilogy when he says to Luke, you can't save this guy. You have to kill Vader. You know, because now we've seen Obi-Wan has that experience. Luke never got to experience Vader at his absolute worst, which was in Revenge of the Sith, and here, and then in that brief moment in Rogue One, where we really just see he is capable of just so much evil. So I really like that they drive that home, because it does push that narrative for Obi-Wan later on.
The shot of Obi burning, and it zooms in and he's the one in the fire. That was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, what a fitting punishment for Obi-Wan to just suffer the same fate. And I will say, I do understand the criticisms of why does Vader just let him go. That's a question that we're going to come up against in a couple more episodes. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. It's like, yeah. Go ahead.
A question that the very existence of this series, we knew we were going to be asking. I mean, they can't kill each other. So
yeah, and so the question became like, what are the circumstances under which they're going to confront each other? I thought that was more interesting than like wondering if they would die. I was totally engrossed in that. This first confrontation was very well done, actually shot on location, and the way that he had handled his lightsaber up until that point, we were expecting a dramatic reveal, but all we got instead was the quick like panic reaction, him igniting it in the beginning of a shot, no real like build up to it at all. And that really highlighted how terrified he was of Vader in this instance. Such a great scene, great confrontation, but Vader is just such a drama queen. Good Lord. Drags him through the flame and then like pushes him back, and then he's just like, all right, bring him to me, giving them the opportunity to escape. This and the laser grid, where they could literally just walk around it. They couldn't walk around the fire. It was all of like 4 meters across. They just let him go. It's contrived and an excuse to thread it out a little bit, and a way for him to justifiably escape from Vader. Yes, exceptionally well done.
I appreciate that you think that, because that's another scene that I've seen a lot of criticism for online is, oh, it's not just so grand. I loved it because it seems like something out of a horror movie. Like Vader pops up, slashes, and he's gone. It's like they may as well be doing Alien right there. Like they could be going through the vents and just doing a bunch of jump scares. You know, I really liked that. And you can't have that. You can't have the big fight yet, because we have to save that for the end.
The hero's journey. He's got to get into it first. Is that going to get edited out?
No, We'll keep it in.
He said it. It's canon now.
The only other thing I want to bring up about this episode before we move on is this is the episode that does introduce, I can't remember the character's name, but Indira Varma, Tala's character. Who is, you know, and I hate to say this, the only other incidental character outside of Haja who was interesting. Because from here on out, we're going to meet more new characters.
Awesome.
It's true. Because from here on out, we're going to be throwing more new characters into the mix who, again, like the Inquisitors, they don't do too much. It's unfortunate. But unless anyone else has anything more to say on this episode, I think we can move on to part 4. We good? All right, part 4. Written by Joby Harold and Hannah Friedman. IMDb 6.3, Rotten Tomatoes 62. This is the first major dip with the ratings for this series. And after seeing the series as a whole, I can understand why. This kind of ended up feeling like the filler episode. We've just had a great confrontation between Kenobi and Vader, and now we're abandoning that, with the exception of, like, I do think the opening scene with him in the bacta tank, you know, side by side with Vader, that's a great moment. But, you know, now we're abandoning that to go on the rescue mission.
This was such a silly episode. As soon as I left it, I thought, all right, that's going to be the easiest one for me to trim out of the series, because it doesn't have to happen at all. It doesn't add anything to the story. It's just another excuse for them to get into a confrontation and escape. And if I had a nickel for every time I've seen a character break another character out of an Imperial prison, I could probably pay for a month of Disney Plus. It's just absurd. The way that Reva interrogated Leia like she was some mastermind was just laughable. And worst of all, the confrontation where Kenobi shatters the glass, spoiler alert for Fallen Order, is exactly the same thing we've seen in another media, which again is something that will come up again in this series. They're just taking they're recycling the story beats. And Obi-Wan, I feel like he's only got like 5 lines in the whole episode. It doesn't forward his narrative at all. We learn nothing about him, and it's just him like coming back into the Force. And there's a better way for him to do that, namely, I think, through Qui-Gon. But maybe that's for season 2. Tala bluffing her way into the Inquisitorius was pretty cool. But still, like they're in this library, and then she knocks out this guy audibly right behind one wall and comes back, and nobody notices. The Imperials are just so inept. This guy's the head of security on this floor, and she pulls like, "Oh, I'm going to talk to your manager," and he's like, "Okay, fine, you can go through." That's not how you do your job.
That's just bad management. If he's afraid to go to his manager so much that he would let him on through and break the rules. I like Tala's part, but I also said everyone can hear what she's saying. The other people at those other stations, they're like, what? I really like the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode when Vader just storms in there and without even listening to a single thing, just lifts Reva up. And it's just like, I told you what it would mean. The consequences for your actions. Like, I was just like, yes, this is the Vader I want to see. He's just absolutely pummeling her as soon as he walks in the door. That was really cool and really fun. And then she finally gets it out that it's a trap. That last part was cool. But yes, the middle of it was all filler.
And not only is it filler, it honestly, like, it did introduce to me a cool concept that the rest of the series fails to explore, which is the weird wax museum of Jedi that they have in the basement of the Inquisitor's fortress. And Obi-Wan's just like, oh no, this isn't, this is like it's almost ripped right out of Lord of the Rings. It's almost like it's a tomb.
I think we'll be back to that with some Mandalorian stuff. Is my theory. Be related to what they're trying to do with Baby Yoda.
I mean, they've got to bring it back because it's one of the few things about the episode that piqued my interest is what are they doing with these Jedi down there? Is it, some people have theorized, like, is this sort of part of the Emperor's, like clone thing that, that goes on, in the sequel trilogy? Like, where does it connect? You introduced it. Tell me more.
Yeah, I kind of almost even forgot about that scene, and now that you bring it up, yeah, I was like, they did never bring that back, and now I'm wondering, like, what's going on.
And again, this is the episode where we are introduced to Roken, played by O'Shea Jackson Jr., and Sully, played by Maya Erskine, and I can't even remember the name of the third character who dies at the end of the episode because he's only. Wade.
And rest in peace, Wade.
These are actors who've done some great work in film and television and small stuff, and particularly Maya Erskine. Like, why are you there? Like this, I mean, yes.
Cool to be on the resume. Wasn't in Star Wars.
Yep.
Fund all their independent projects for the next 10 years.
What was Ice Cube's son's name? What is his name?
O'Shea Jackson Jr.
O'Shea Jackson. He's definitely coming back. I mean, there's something with him coming, because that last scene he has with Obi-Wan where they're talking, like they're setting him up for something. I don't know that I
would agree.
care yet.
He was so uninteresting.
Yeah, we didn't really get to know
costumes. Like, if you think about the Rebellion over the original trilogy, the costumes they have are all very interesting, but still, like, thrown together. They're designed to look thrown together. But ever since then, the Rebellion characters have had incredibly dull costumes. In the sequels, the Resistance all look like they're wearing sacks, and that's kind of echoed here. I'm not interested in these designs. The ships look like they're thrown together, whereas we had really interesting rebellion ships, and now they're just like boxes with thrusters. Where's the design element of Star Wars that makes it interesting to watch? All the settings, the backdrops are. Which episode are we on? 4. This is
4.
No, I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead. Yeah, the costumes and the ships are boring. I'm tired of these lame designs.
I think we're feeling a little bit of the budget there, which is unfortunate.
It's Star Wars. Why is there a budget?
The budget affected this whole series. I mean, yeah, Obi-Wan and Vader are battling in like a wheat mine, or like a wheat like granary.
Which was, I mean, it was cool. It was different.
It was a granary, so
you go
it looked like Oklahoma.
Yeah, seriously, you go from the desert to a city, which is different, back to a desert, but this time it's got hills and some shrubbery. There's more than this in the galaxy.
Yep. And yeah, I'm glad you brought that up as well, because this is the only time in this series we go to like a water planet. And unfortunately, it's the episode that, again, it's the filler episode. I love the idea that they go to the Inquisitor's Fortress, but it's just not a good part of the story.
I'd like to be back at the fortress again sometime. Yeah, I like the fortress, but I don't know that we really will.
Like Fallen Order.
Yes. Oh. Yep, that is. And just like Kyle said, this episode echoes a little too many of the story beats towards the end of Fallen Order. So I think it's time to move on to part 5. It's written by Joby Harold and Andrew Stanton. Andrew Stanton, of course, a veteran of Pixar. IMDb 8, Rotten Tomatoes 83%. I have mixed feelings about this episode. So if anyone else wants to jump in first, go right ahead.
It's silly. There's so much silly in the series. The siege was unbelievable, and the way that Tala died was kind of also silly, because we want to care about her, but we don't really have a reason to care about her. Like, maybe she's going to be a love interest, but he's already lost the team. It's played so dramatically, but I don't think it had been earned. The moments between Obi-Wan and Reva are fantastic, and the way, I mean, everything in the last like 10 minutes is spectacular, but the way that they rated it, I think, was like just action for the sake of action and bottlenecking. It was not believable how they took so few casualties and how terrible the stormtroopers are at aiming. If you want to say that the Force is, the plot armor, that's one thing, but it just was not handled well. You can't do these tight siege scenes and expect to lose so few people.
Yeah, I think I was probably the most positive on this episode out of this group, though I do agree with the small battle. That's always a big problem for me in Star Wars, is the scale. When the scale gets small, I lose myself. But I liked the flashbacks and how they informed the siege, and we kind of this episode went by really fast for me, because I was like, Anakin and Obi-Wan are talking about something. How is that going to play into their siege? And I liked all that. Unlike Boba Fett, where we talked about the flashbacks served no purpose for the actual story that is happening in the quote unquote real timeline. This did. I just found it interesting. I think we're all of the age where we were younger when the prequels came out. So it was just really cool to see them talking to each other as Master and Padawan, Anakin and Obi-Wan. So I have complete rose-tinted glasses for this. And my wife was crying at Tala's death. So I know I agree with you, Kyle, but it worked on her. So it was just like, the actress is really good. The actress is like, brings something to that. And the robot, what is his name? What's that droid's name?
Ned B.
Ned. Ned. You sweet, wonderful, just moving droid. Oh, MVP.
That's cute. Why didn't they de-age Hayden in the flashbacks?
Yeah.
Because the flashback was so good. I think they should have built the series around that. We should have seen more of their banter going back, maybe some Clone Wars, reenactments, something to build that relationship a little more firmly. because that was so good.
Yeah.
I love the prequels.
Yeah, they didn't seem to de-age him, maybe a little bit, but I was
within
willing to look
within the
past
week.
it.
Someone else had already like done it in the same way that they did it better.
Can they
Which
hire
is funny
that?
because
It looks
Obi-Wan
just
was
like it does.
definitely like de-aged.
They were the same age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can they hire the person who did it later?
I love the flashbacks and the way that they connected to the story that was being told now. You know, I do again, I have my gripes with the prequels, and it's almost exclusively with the script and George Lucas's like hackneyed directing. Because Hayden deserved so much better in those films. He had already proven himself as an actor prior, and to see what he went through to those films, and to have Anakin turn out the way he did in the films, it's like, this is the Anakin, you know. I think fans who watched the Clone Wars got the Anakin they wanted, and fans who will watch Obi-Wan are going to get the Anakin that they wanted in the prequels. So I agree. I do think that a lot of this series should have focused more on their past relationship, because there is also a huge gap between the Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars, which I believe at this point, because of what Disney's done with decanonizing so much, is left open.
How big of a gap was between Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith too? Because I don't feel like they were right.
15 years.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot they could have.
No, I think it's 2 years between 2 and 3, but 10 between 1 and 2.
And I mean, obviously, Clone Wars covers plenty between 2 and 3.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like where Anakin was at the end of 2 to where he was at the beginning, I mean, there's definitely like a something, you know, a growth storyline somewhere in there. He was not like the same person.
Well, that's Clone Wars, yeah.
That is Clone Wars, yeah.
Wars, yeah. It redeems the characters in the prequels.
Yeah. I mean, I think watching the flashback scenes here was like a Hayden performance informed by the full might of the Clone Wars as well. Like, we just got a little bit more of the brashness, but also when he says, you know, you're always trying to win, you need to prove yourself. You know, there's kind of like a smile, you know, like he's like, yeah, that is me. You know, I felt that was really cool, and to see Hayden do it was really cool.
There's a lot more humanity in Anakin instead of just the impetuous teen. Yeah.
And the other big part about this episode that Kyle mentioned is this is the episode where Reva's motivations are finally brought to light, which is a cool moment, but I do think it happens far too late in the series for her story to matter as much. Because after this episode, I don't want to jump too far into the next episode, but after this episode, her storyline to me doesn't hold up as well.
The point where they're talking between the door, and he says, you know, we want the same thing. And she says, do we? That was fantastic. And then when she says, where were you? He was your Padawan. That was also fantastic. Just worth it.
Riding a giant lizard.
Yeah.
It also finally, you know, it going back to, if you were to go back and rewatch Obi-Wan, that opening scene, which is the younglings, makes so much more sense. Because the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, what's this going to lead into? Oh, okay.
It never
I did feel like
break my
her
heart.
going after Vader was not very believable, though, in the end. Like, especially after that scene with Obi-Wan, I don't know. I just felt at the end when it was just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, why didn't she just ignite it in his back? She lines up and screams.
I know. It's just kind of like.
Or why doesn't she try to kill him?
The resulting conflict was amazing. He didn't even pull out his own lightsaber. He blocked it with his hand and then took her lightsaber and like threw it at him.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That is top tier Vader. So I'm working on an edit now, and she will die at that point. Her story ends at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I was kind of
after that.
I kind of felt like it was weird that he didn't kill her, but
Yeah,
especially since it was the same thing that she had done to the Grand Inquisitor, who is now back for some reason and also not serving any point in the story. It was weird. Why even bring him up?
One of my favorite observations that's been made is like, why didn't she try to kill him when he was force pulling the ship? Because, you know, that's your moment. He's distracted. Nope. But again, Kyle's right. That fight between them is incredible, and it's unlike anything that we have seen in live action Star Wars before. So I appreciate that they tried to do something new with a lightsaber battle.
Yeah.
But yeah, why do you live?
Why doesn't she try to kill him with the ship? Because we need that battle later, I guess.
Yeah.
Because plot.
And just I think another unfortunate part of this episode is we get to see the return of Haja, who unfortunately from this point out isn't as interesting as he was in the second part. He's relegated to Leia's babysitter.
It was nice to see him instead of introducing a new character, but yeah, I mean, not really nowhere near the impact that he had in chapter 2 or episode 2.
Yeah, his Han conversion was very abrupt. Yeah, I just realized that I can cut him out of the second half altogether. I'm learning stuff.
God, that battle was cool. Thank you, Ben, for remembering. We're sitting here talking about the episode. Like, why do we watch Star Wars for that? Vader didn't even look at his lightsaber. He's just like, okay, bring it. That was awesome.
His motivations were unclear, though, because if he always knew that she was one of the younglings that he didn't kill and promoted her to Grand Inquisitor while the Grand Inquisitor was alive, what happened here? Because she had failed and let him go again in the Castle Inquisitorius when he had actually broken into their main castle. What is Vader's plan? What is he doing?
He's a drama guy.
Yeah, I don't think he ever has a plan.
Yeah. He needs Palpatine.
Palpatine's job.
Sarah, you may
Clearly,
be
as
right.
the flashback showed, he doesn't have a plan.
Yeah. He's not patient enough for her to see the full siege. That's right. I mean, this is the same guy who, what is it in episode 2? Like, almost gets his hand chopped off in the foundry. So, you know, the same guy who does get his hand chopped off.
He is clearly playing the long game with this character, with Reva raising her from a youngling to an Inquisitor, and then tricking her into thinking that she's the Grand Inquisitor now because she's going to pursue Kenobi harder. I did not follow that. It made no sense.
I think we'll learn more about that. What I thought initially, and I admit the show doesn't really like flesh this out, but I feel like the dark side twisting her, you know, he feels there's a lot more potential there, and it, you know, she just doesn't become what he thinks that she's going to become. But everybody goes in. Anakin himself goes into the dark side with good intentions, quote unquote, to save Padme. She goes in there thinking she's better than him, and she's going to set him up to kill him because he killed the kids, and she ends up becoming him. And Vader thinks, I can use that. That's kind of what I think of it, but that's not really in the show.
It's the line, do you really think I did not see that coming, youngling? That suggests that he always knew this was her plan. And yeah, it's definitely a dark side thing to use that like against them. But then why kill her? Why not like maybe incapacitate her and then turn her into a cyborg like he does with Starkiller? You know, recycle that beat, which is no longer canon.
I like it.
All right, let's move on to part 6 because I think it's time. So part 6, story by Stuart Beattie, Joby Harold, and Andrew Stanton. Teleplay by Joby Harold, Andrew Stanton, and Hussein Amini. IMDb 8.6, Rotten Tomatoes 86. This is the most highly rated episode of the series, and I think we all know exactly why. Let's just jump right into it. the lightsaber fight is so good.
Yes. I cannot. This is why I watched the show. Like this is what I was wanting. When Vader's mask gets pulled and we see Obi-Wan see Anakin's face, and just his apology is so just well done, and it means so much to us who have watched the prequels, and I'm sorry for all of it. And then Vader, seeing Hayden play Vader and almost smile, I killed Anakin, all that stuff was just great. I never thought I'd get to see any of this, and it felt like we shouldn't be here. This is like magic. It was one of the best Star Wars moments that I've had in a long time. I felt true magic within this particular scene or cut scenes. It was awesome and well lit, by the way. Lightsabers are freaking fantastic for lighting, getting the red and the blue on both sides of their faces the whole time through it. Fantastic.
Absolutely. The only complaint I have about it is, yet again, and they have to do this because plot. Why does Obi-Wan let him go?
I know. I definitely had a thought of like, well, you could have saved Planet Alderaan.
Yeah. Why does Vader think the rocks kill him was my bigger thing. I think Obi-Wan lets him go because do you really want to kill him? The answer is no. Obi-Wan really doesn't want to do it. He's not going to do it. He may tell himself he wants to do it, but Reva calls him on that. But Vader leaving Obi-Wan and thinking, I sure got him with those rocks. That was more egregious to me, but I didn't mind it.
Yeah, that was definitely weird that he thought he killed him with the rock.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have left for this because Anakin was already dead. If he concluded that Anakin was dead, so goodbye, Darth. So he wouldn't have a qualm with murdering him in that case. But yeah, getting Vader to have the high ground again and then not know what to do with it was pretty funny. And watching Vader get his ass handed to him in live action was so great, so unique. Getting the frazzled breathing and the face slice off, and Hayden's face underneath was just so well acted, even though we only got that side of his face. So good. But we got that slow speed space chase like we did in Last Jedi. And then there was the one diversion. Why couldn't Vader, who went down to the planet by himself anyway, just take his ship after Kenobi and let the Star Destroyer pursue the rebels? I'm not very confident in his plan, his planning ability, as I've stated.
Ego, I guess.
One track mind, that Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Though, now that I think about it, given the number of characters in this series alone who people leave assuming to be dead, it makes so much more sense now why when Vader strikes down Obi-Wan in A New Hope that he, stomps on the robes and it's like, okay, we better make sure now because we've made this mistake in the past. Can't let it come back to haunt us again.
Trapdoor.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't think we need to say much more about the lightsaber fight just because it's everything we wanted out of the series, which I think makes it unfortunate that it's followed up by the end of Reva's storyline, which is so much more anticlimactic.
I do want to say one more thing about the lightsaber fight.
Ahead.
The setting was not great. I think they could have used a more interesting backdrop for this. If the fog had been a little bit more interesting and not just kind of like a poor rendering, the scene was not interesting. It was not super. I don't feel like the lighting was intentional enough, and the fact that it was just like rock spires without a whole lot of character. Again, the budget seems to have been coming through here. The design was not inspiring. This was not like Mustafar. If they had mirrored that in some interesting way or used that in a more intentional way, I think they could have gotten them. It would have been a lot more impactful. But I was bored by the setting, as I was for most of the show.
You know what I think is
that
spoiled?
setting.
Oh, go ahead, Miles.
We're the opposite. I didn't like the chapter 3 setting, and I did like this one. But an inverse of Mustafar, say like an ice planet or something like that, would have been even cooler.
Unintended. I'll just move on.
What?
I was just going to say, I think that one thing that's kind of spoiled the setting of lightsaber battles for me going on out is, as much as we look at the sequel trilogy now as a sort of rough patchwork of how did they make this possibly happen, the lightsaber battle at the end of Force Awakens has one of the best settings ever in the woods during the snowstorm. And I can understand, Kyle, why you'd want more effects going on there. Why don't they set it in like a jungle with obstacles all around them? Something more than just rocks. But it was cool to see Obi-Wan do some heavy lifting with those rocks. I'll give him that. And also, one of the reasons that the ending of part 3 does, looking back at it, is kind of rough, is like, man, Vader could have just, while Obi-Wan was stuck in the fire the whole time, just freaking put his hand down and trapped him right there and, did this little force earthquake.
He was surrounded by piles of sand. I didn't put that together. Why did we not make that connection? He's not a fan of sand. Obi-Wan could have just been like, look at that. Look at that. Oh my God. Vader's cowering.
Don't you remember, dude, how coarse and rough it is and how it gets everywhere? Oh,
there's a lot of crevices in that suit of yours. It'd be a shame if someone were to force push it.
I'm gonna move on now to closer to the end of this episode. So we've got Reva hunting Luke, and just after that epic battle with Obi-Wan, it doesn't feel like that's where it should have, as a piece of action climax, that's where it should have ended, not with Reva and with Luke. Like the denouement, everything that comes after, love that, but it just feels like it's only there to set up where Reva's story is going to go next. Goodness knows in what series or film that's going to end up being.
Do you think there will be more story for her? Because I kind of got a feeling like that was kind of the end of her story, but maybe.
I think they deliberately kept her alive for the purpose of bringing her back, because every villain in Star Wars needs a redemption. Except for Tarkin, apparently. But she now knows a secret that nobody else in the galaxy can know. Even if she's like reformed and better, I don't think Obi-Wan can afford to let her live. I don't see him killing her, but it did not seem realistic that he would let her go, knowing that she knows that Vader has a kid.
It definitely seemed like she was more kind of there for Obi-Wan to have a chance to kind of like tell himself, the fact that I showed mercy is good. Like, but that was kind of what it felt like to me. Like it was him kind of, I didn't kill Anakin, but it's good that I showed mercy. Like,
it also just seemed. Go ahead, Miles.
Oh, where she's chasing Luke out of the, after Owen and Beru put up a fight, she's chasing Luke. That was the most worried I got. Like, you cannot have Luke be like, oh, wait, you know what? I do know the Force. There was a thing that chased me with a red lightsaber one time. I feel like they knocked him out appropriate, but I was very nervous. Like, whoa, be very careful here. Luke can't be running around looking at Sith, or Inquisitors. So, that whole like other side of the episode had me very nervous for that.
That's pretty much what I was just going to bring up. More Owen and Beru is great. I don't like what they did there, just because like I can believe that Leia has led this exciting, crazy life where she was kidnapped as a kid, but like for Luke at some point to be like thinking back, like, yeah, I was hunted down by an Inquisitor at one point. What a boring life I've led. You're on this desert planet. It's like, he's supposed to have done nothing his whole life.
I think he leaves this episode thinking it was just the Tuskens. Does he get a good look at her?
No.
Yeah.
No, but it's hard for me to believe that Luke is just thinking, oh, it was the Tuskens the whole time, because I don't know. For one thing, I feel like that's, and this is just a stupid thing to think, but like, wouldn't the Tuskens make that crazy noise they make?
I think they just said Raiders, not Tusken necessarily, but maybe they did.
No.
Kids are pretty like, I mean, they kind of go with the flow. Like kids don't overanalyze like adults do. So
especially if that story
kids
had been
take things
reinforced.
I mean, I work with kids and I have kids. Kids take things at face value.
This is
like,
the same.
Okay, cool. Like,
this is the
tell them something. They're like, okay.
This is the same guy who later says Obi-Wan Kenobi, I wonder if he's any relation to Ben Kenobi. So
okay, that's a good point.
And while I love Luke, but he is not like the brightest.
Yeah.
No.
Leia is definitely the more badass one.
And speaking of Luke, like I said, everything that happens after this, just Obi-Wan getting to go back to Alderaan and reconnect with Leia ever so briefly, and then actually getting to meet Luke, is such a nice moment. And it's, of course, features the moment that we were all waiting for, is saying that iconic line. Hello there.
Hello there.
And I love that they just cut it off there, that we didn't need to see a conversation between those two characters.
He probably says the exact same mother and father speech he gives Princess Leia on a heavily populated tarmac. Obi-Wan, you're going to want to lower your voice on that. But I loved when he describes Padme and Anakin to Leia. That was a heartstring moment.
I felt like a lot of his scenes with Leia throughout the series, I really, really loved. I loved how much it just kind of showed that character's like, not necessarily romantic love, but clearly he loved Padme and he loved Anakin like so much. Yeah. And seeing them like in their kids Ewan did like amazing.
I know we're jumping all the way back to part 3 for this, but I do love the moment where he tells Leia, I wish I could have been your father.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She was Natalie Portman, of course he would.
Oh, someone had to go there. And then it all ends with Qui-Gon, the return of Liam Neeson, which I think we expected it, but it was still a nice surprise, especially considering that Liam Neeson had fairly recently said that he would love to return to Star Wars, but he'd want to do it in a film and not in a series. But then after this episode finally aired, he said, well, of course I was going to do it. I can't let someone else do it.
I was definitely waiting for that. I was happy to see it.
We had like 3 Chekhov's guns in the first 3 episodes where he tries to contact him. So obviously we were going to see him later. But the way they did it was like more fan service than anything else, or setting up season 2. I thought that what we were going to get is after he gets beaten in the Sand Planet, that he would then regain himself with Qui-Gon, rediscover the Force through the Master. He would learn more about the Force, more about the philosophy that Qui-Gon embodied. But instead, it was just a cameo that served no point and didn't really teach us anything. And it's like, we only have Liam Neeson for half a day. What can we do with it?
Yep. I agree there. My note on that is literally, what a tease. Because much like Ewan's casting in the entire prequel trilogy, Liam Neeson grounds the Phantom Menace in a way that makes it rewatchable just for his character. And it's such a shame that he's a character that dies off so soon. I wish that he'd been able to stick around for much more. And it could be a series, a season 2, as we get to explore that. But I don't know if we need to go there. Who knows?
There's a book called Master and Apprentice, which is super involved between that. And I really loved it. I know no one wants to hear, like, read the book and then, but the Qui-Gon appearance is really only there to reset the Yoda line from Revenge of the Sith, which when he says, you got some training to do. Qui-Gon, oh, okay. Like, they have to reset that at the end of this, so he's there to do it. Like, it's really
he hasn't been doing that training.
Yeah, he has not opened up that packet.
He's been bumming around, depressed.
Somebody did an edit of that scene where Obi-Wan walks up to the canyon, and instead of Qui-Gon standing there, it's Dexter Jetster. As the Force Ghost. And he turns around and Obi-Wan says, I was beginning to think you weren't coming. Oh, buddy. It's beautiful.
Oh, boy.
Fans,
well, I think that wraps up our breakdown of the episode. So I'm going to ask, and I'll jump to Miles just on this one first. What did you think of the series as a whole? What do you think of the story, the characters, and the performances, everything about it?
Well, I thought that I got what I wanted out of the series, which was these wonderful beats for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character. Him reconciling with the failure of the Jedi Order, him, hearing back, like, the blame that he kind of deserves, like, where were you? And do you really even want to kill this guy? And just so many different moments where Obi-Wan gets to reconcile with the events of the prequels and pivot forward to the Alec Guinness character that we see later, who is clearly not as hung up on the past, though he's got some aging to do in the next 9 years. And the other thing about the series, and I know probably everyone will say this, but the amount of Darth Vader we got, and just the, like, probably baker's dozen of awesome Vader moments that we got from this series, 2 thumbs up from me. If we had to take our medicine with kind of a few little things that didn't make as much sense, I thought it was enough to justify the packaging for Obi-Wan and Vader moments that we got.
Kyle, I'll move on to you next.
So first of all, Ewan McGregor is at the very top of my gay for list. If he wanted to go to be gay for me, I would go gay for him. So that said, when I first heard about the series, what I was expecting, I was looking forward to a slow, pensive story about Kenobi's life in the desert. I wanted to see him learn. I wanted it to focus on the Force and his relationship to him. Like I said, sending him on a vision quest with Qui-Gon to understand more and enrich our understanding of what makes this universe tick. And instead, there was a lot of, like, slow, weird, boring decisions made. And Obi-Wan himself almost entirely disappears from the narrative when the other rebel group is introduced. I do appreciate how they approach his reluctance to engage in the first episode, and I think using Leia as the catalyst to draw him out of Tatooine was masterful. Like you said, Ben, no one was expecting that. So McGregor and Vivian Blair, their performances were spot on, but they got lost in that sagging middle with all the unremarkable refugees. Kathleen Kennedy had said that the first draft of the script was too bleak, but I would have loved to see that personally, because what we ended up with became sort of like a generic estranged Jedi story featuring all the beats that we've seen many times before, told amongst uninteresting scenery with another cast of throwaway rebellious characters.
Sarah, what did you think of the series as a whole?
Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed watching it. I can't really go gay for Ewan, but I would watch it. I would pay to watch him read a cereal box. So, anything with Ewan is good with me. And I love his take on Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was one of my favorite parts of the prequels, and I loved where he took it in this series. I really loved seeing young Leia. She was awesome, and she was exactly how I would have pictured young Leia. I think it felt like she even looked kind of like a young Carrie Fisher too. So I thought they cast her really, really well. You know, some of the other stuff I could take or leave, but it didn't take away enough that I feel like that the Obi-Wan and Anakin stuff, the Obi-Wan and Leia stuff, and then seeing a little bit of Luke as a little kid, it was all kind of filled my nostalgia bucket. So I thought I found it enjoyable and I liked it overall.
Yeah, I think this is just such a great reunion for Ewan and Hayden Christensen. Like I said, the script and the directing of the prequels does them a great disservice, and this, you know, for all of its flaws, their dynamic in this series is incredible. Obi-Wan and Leia's dynamic is incredible. I think that this series does a better job honoring the performances of Carrie Fisher throughout the years as Leia than shoehorning her into the Rise of Skywalker did. This is what should have happened with the character long ago, is rather than trying to push her forward without Carrie, going back and building on what was already there. Yeah, Kyle, I love what you said about these are amazing characters who get lost in some very uninteresting moments where we introduce a lot of stuff that ultimately doesn't matter that much to the story, but there's enough there that I enjoyed myself. I got the confrontations I wanted. I got the performances I wanted from Ewan and Hayden. Oh boy, do I wish that those two had so much more time together, because, you know, you look back on it, it's like, yeah, they cast Hayden correctly. They just didn't use him correctly. So I think this series rectifies a lot of mistakes, makes its own, but it's satisfactory. It'll do. So I think kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask, and I'll go to Sarah first. Do you feel like this story effectively bridges a gap between the prequel and original trilogies?
Yeah, I mean, I think it did, and I'm not have not watched all the other series that take place in the. I haven't watched. I haven't watched all the different Star Wars series. I've watched like the main movies, but I don't think I've watched any of the other series other than like the newer Disney Plus ones like Mandalorian. So for me, just kind of being a fan of the movies, but not knowledgeable about the larger Star Wars universe, and all the books and all the comics and all the different series, I felt like it did bridge a gap for me. Like it fit, and I felt like it fit that space that, from what I've seen, between, you know, Revenge of the Sith and New Hope.
And I'm going to go ahead and just sort of add in the second part of this question. Is does this series change the way you view character relationships in those films? Sarah,
I feel like it definitely brings something to like Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship with Luke in A New Hope. Kind of seeing what happened in this series, and even more so like why Leia would send the message to him. I love that we never knew there was like a relationship between them, and I think that's brilliant, and I love it. And I think it also, you know, because of like the battle between Vader and Obi-Wan in A New Hope is, you know, what it is, because there wasn't the ability to do more. But in a way, it actually kind of like, I feel like it kind of sets up why that's so kind of anticlimactic, because they already had like and then it was like at that point he was ready, you know, to pass the torch to Luke.
I love what you mentioned about Leia, because it also makes the moment where Luke breaks her out of prison that much more meaningful. Ben Kenobi, where is he? And it's only a little bit of a shame now that we can't, go. I mean, it's Star Wars; they may change it, but like Luke is just so depressed, and Leia is there comforting him. It's like, oh man, Luke, if only you knew how much worse she's probably feeling than you right now. Now that we know all of this, Kyle, how do you feel? What do you feel about the bridging the gap and character relationships that this establishes?
By definition, yeah, it bridges a gap, but I don't think it needed to. It was kind of like how Solo tried to answer questions that no one had. Ultimately, it clarified a few of those lines in the original trilogy, but Rebels did such a better job with this subject. It even did a better job of the exact same Vader confrontation. Now, spoilers, of course, because he gets his mask sliced off in exactly the same way to show that Anakin wasn't just trapped beneath a black cage, he was dead through and through. And if you want to like bridge the trilogies, watch Rebels, because even the Inquisitors were done so much better. The main character's last name is literally Bridger. That's the point. Yeah. So it had the conversations, the moments that I liked with uninteresting set dressing. And it did clarify the recognition when Leia recognized Ben Kenobi, but we didn't really learn anything. I do wish we'd seen a lot more of Owen and Beru. Beru just took no prisoners in this one. And the way that, I don't know if they did anything to her face, but Bonnie looked exactly like a younger version of the original Beru actress. Maybe they added prosthetics or something, but it was like perfect prescient casting. But Owen's antagonism towards Kenobi is really interesting, and it's explored more in the comics, but I think seeing it more of it in live action would have been compelling. I think what they should have done is set it up with Owen sort of being the antagonist for maybe like half of it, three episodes, before pulling out the rug and saying, oh, nope, Vader's here. I think they played their cards, like I said, too early with the Inquisitors, which ended up producing those laughable stakes where they had to just let him get away every episode. But don't worry, we're tracking. It was intentional, instead of just killing him when they had him.
Miles, what are your thoughts on these questions?
I mean, you both Kyle and Sarah kind of hit on my two main points. My first one was the Obi-Wan, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi with Leia. Like that does change the way that I look at that line, that I look at the fact that she names her son Ben. I all of that looks different to me now, and I like that. But this creates a gap too, Phil. I don't know that there was a gap that was needed, but the gap that I'm most interested in that they create is just that Anakin and Vader, and just the relationship between that. We do see this in Rebels already, and we almost the exact same thing on the opposite side, and it is done better there. But it's just one of those things that I can't get enough of. So the Ahsoka battle and this battle, like just seeing that he truly is gone and that he truly is evil, is really satisfying, because that all plays into the final moment of Return of the Jedi when he does save his son, Luke Skywalker. Spoiler alert for Return of the Jedi.
I mean, yeah, obviously this does fill a gap in between those trilogies, but as we sort of alluded to, it's questions like in Solo that didn't need to be answered, but I do love thematically seeing this middle-aged Obi-Wan going from broken to reconnecting with the Force and going back to a place where he has hope, because obviously that's where all of our protagonists need to be in Episode 4. It's the title, A New Hope. So I do love that. Now, this story was originally planned as a film, and then Solo happened, and Kathleen Kennedy and a lot of people at Lucasfilm had sort of lost faith in the idea that Star Wars could be spun off into films. Thank goodness, though, they had this streaming service they could start putting things onto. So they decided to make it into a series. question is, do you think it would work better as a roughly, 2+ hour film, or did this series serve the story being told? Miles, I'm going to jump to you first.
Yes, this works better as a film to me, just unequivocally in my mind. We've got Ewan back, we've got Hayden, we've got James Earl Jones voicing. This deserves the full movie experience, and I think it would have been better because the filler is taking. What have we been saying for like 2 hours here? We love these little parts, and the rest of it is actually how much we're talking about, varying levels of how much it detracts from our experience. So I think it should have been a movie, and I think they learned the wrong lesson from Solo. They're being way too reactionary here. I liked Solo, by the way.
Sarah, what is your take on this question?
I would also agree. I think it probably would have worked better as a movie, because they could have focused much more on just the kind of the Obi-Wan, Leia, Obi-Wan, Anakin, maybe throw a little Luke in there somewhere just because everyone wants to see him as a kid. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad it was a series because it's easier for me to watch series right now because I have to watch everything after my daughter goes to bed. But I think it would have worked better as a movie.
And finally, Kyle, what is your take on this one?
I'm literally editing it into a movie right now.
My initial thoughts on this was, I don't know. But after our conversation today, just realizing how much of the series does feel like filler, this could be a 2-hour film. And Miles is absolutely correct. You have the two big stars from the prequels. That's enough to draw in an audience to make this a big cinematic experience. The budget would have been considerably more. And part of the problem with this as a series is because each episode has to feel different from the last. We are jumping from planet to planet to different locations in this series instead of sticking to one or two and really exploring them and seeing what they can give to us. So I do think you're right. You're all right. This would be much better if it was a film, and that would also just give them so much more time to focus on the Obi-Wan and Vader interactions and that relationship, and the Obi-Wan and Leia. Because another problem with this series is it's a series. It has to have synergy. That's why we have O'Shea Jackson Jr. in it, and why he clearly is getting to appear somewhere else. That's why Reva gets to live. If this were a movie, we probably wouldn't have Reva. For as good of moments as I think she gets in this series, I don't think we'd have her because the focus would be more on Obi-Wan, and it wouldn't be worried about spinning her off into a different storyline. I could be wrong there, but I do think that it would be a much more focused experience.
Well, and also with a series, they have to have like a climax at the end of every episode and a recap. So it's like they have to kind of constantly do this.
Yeah. I think she would have been a good character for the movie. I do agree that she should have died right at the end of chapter 5 there. She would be a good character for this movie. There's so much pressure on her as a character. She's like the only major role that we don't know what happens. Even the Inquisitors, we know their future. There's a lot of pressure on her. If it was much quicker and she didn't have to sustain so much of the plot, it would have been impactful. There's something there. I do like the idea of her character, and I like her performance. It's just weirdly stretched and weirdly flipped, as we discussed already about the reveal of her knowing who Anakin is right at the beginning. Blows the wad, as it were.
And it's just so curious because Miles, we talked about this a lot on Moon Knight, how that series felt like it could expand more, especially with the finale. This is one of the first Disney Plus shows where it has felt like there may have been too much to tell.
Yeah. I mean, the end of Revenge of the Sith was like, so it sets everything up exactly in the place where it's going to be. Like, literally, Yoda's going to Dagobah, Obi-Wan's going to Tatooine, Bail is going to Alderaan with Princess Leia as a newborn. Like, I mean, it sets it up exactly. There wasn't as much as Moon Knight is introducing a character and expanding into the world of Egyptian gods. Like, we want more of that. This is a much smaller piece of a story.
And I would have liked to see the lightsaber battles on the big screen.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, no matter what, the lightsaber battles are almost always incredible. Now, Ewan McGregor has expressed his enthusiasm in returning for more. Do you want to see another season of Obi-Wan, or is it time for his story to end? Kyle, I want to go to you first on this one.
I mean, if the next season is that Vision Quest with Qui-Gon, sure. But if it's another retread of him fighting Inquisitors, pass. The problem is, what kind of antagonist could be bigger than Vader? How do you increase the stakes here? Unless he's fighting the ghost of Darth Bane or something. They could recreate the Twin Suns episode of Rebels, but we've seen that already, and it was perfect. And I don't know, where do you go from here? He left Tatooine for a very specific reason. Leia was like the only thing that could drag him off of that planet. Now that he's back, I think he has to stay there. Otherwise, it lessens, his responsibility to Luke. So where do you go from there?
Before I ask this of the next of Miles and Sarah, I agree with you there. And my answer is, if they're going to do it, do what we discussed earlier. Make it a story about Anakin and Obi-Wan in the years between Phantom and Clone Wars, about them, their early days of their Master Padawan relationship that leads up to the training that we see in this episode or in this series, because that's the last gap in Obi-Wan's life that I think they can fill. Because yeah, you're right, Obi-Wan leaving Tatooine again, it's just more of the same.
Yeah. I think there's some rich Qui-Gon stuff to explore, as Kyle said. I mean, Qui-Gon truly believes that Anakin is the chosen one. He's got a connection to the living force that the Jedi Council thinks of him as won't even put him on the council because of it. And all that stuff is really interesting to me, that Qui-Gon thinks that he's so sure that Anakin is going to destroy the great evil that is growing. And he actually is right, technically. And there's just so much richness to that I think is Qui-Gon kind of hearing how things are going might be fun to hear. I think yes for season 2 if they don't up the stakes. Let's just go small. I don't think they'll do this, but Obi-Wan gets to a good place. Owen and Beru got they seem to have this covered. Let's go to a serial, 6 different planets, just go to unknown characters, Obi-Wan solving people's issues out there. That's what I vote for.
Detective Obi-Wan.
Detective Obi-Wan.
Mystery show. No, I felt like I like the idea of exploring more with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and then maybe they could work in some flashbacks with him and Anakin.
Oh yeah,
more flashbacks. But I agree. I think it would be nice. I was kind of expecting this to be more like a character study. So I think a series that kind of focused more on the character relationships could be interesting.
And my final question, and Sarah, I'll just keep it with you here, is where do you want to see Star Wars go from here? Just as a franchise.
I know Dustin, my husband, was talking about, I think, isn't that Taika Waititi is going to be doing some new Star Wars series, and he was saying that he really wants to see new Star Wars stories with new characters. And while I love the nostalgia part of me loves seeing a lot of the old characters brought back because it's fun. I would agree. I think it would be nice to start seeing some new stories with some new characters. It's such a huge universe. I think it would be nice to see some, and that would be a good way to see some different places, see some different planets. I think that I hope that that's kind of the direction they're going to start going, because I do think that would be a good way to go.
Kyle, I'm seeing a lot of agreement from you. What is your take?
Yeah, I agree. I think I want Star Wars to expand its universe, and it needs more consistent direction. The best things to come out of the Disney era Lucasfilm are Mandalorian, Rebels, and Rogue One, all of which feature almost entirely new casts of characters and expand on what came before. The rest of it, the sequel trilogy, Resistance, Solo, Boba Fett, and now Kenobi, unfortunately, seem built for the sake of having new Star Wars content to share, not to tell stories that have to be told. So give us new genres, give us new iconic characters with compelling arcs that carry Star Wars into the next generation. Expand the Force lore and give us some weird freaky-ish like Clone Wars did. Send us on those vision quests in Dagobah caves. Tellingly, I found the best Star Wars stuff tends to come from Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. And Lisa proposed the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Filoni and Favreau dream team. I think they need more power in the master storyteller office.
Miles, what is your take?
Oh, well, I agree that we need to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, who are the artists here? Like, who's making these decisions? Is it the money people or the artists? And Filoni and Favreau, who has already helped with this in the origins of the MCU, they know the secret sauce is to have the artists make what they're going to make. If I got to make one Beatles reference every time I do this here, Ben, but when the Beatles made Rubber Soul, all the money men and all the executives were like, you need to go back to I Want to Hold Your Hand. That's what makes the money. I feel like we're seeing fingerprints of we need more Vader. We need more this. People really love when Black Widow shows up in a different story. So we've got to have crossovers and stuff like that. They're adding stuff in and they're not part of the art. I don't know the inner workings, but what I do hope is that we are building something around an iconic character that has been created in the last 5 years, whose name is Grogu, or as my wife calls him, refuses to call him Grogu, Baby Yoda. But I do think we're building something around that. Maybe it's going to tie into the cloning stuff for Rise of Skywalker. I still can't even think or talk about that movie. That one is hurting. But if maybe we can all get this Clone Wars stuff, this cloning stuff, Sith alchemy. Now I'm just pissing myself off. But I think we're building towards that plot hole somehow. I mean, hey, we've taken Star Wars plot holes and made them something great. Look at Rogue One. So I think with the Ahsoka series, with the Mando series, with the stuff we're and some of the characters introduced in this series, we're going that way.
I hope you're right, because I agree. It's time to venture out into new territories. It's the whole galaxy you have to play with. You can do something completely different. It could be time.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Taika is doing a Star Wars movie, like, confirmed.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a brand new story. He does not want to tie it into the existing saga.
I really like, so I'm just behind on that. I really like that because I think he also has like the cred to not be pushed around by those very people I was just talking about. So I love that.
Yeah, people kind of expect him to do something new and different. So.
Yep, I'm ready. I'm ready to introduce new characters and not bring back these legacy characters and feel like we need to bridge gaps, because the more we bring back classic characters or we try to fill in gaps, the more we're shoehorned into scenarios like, well, we can't kill Obi-Wan and Vader. Mm-hmm. We can't raise those stakes high enough. I really hope that going forward, The Mandalorian isn't going to try and tie itself back too much to Luke, because it's a series that can explore all new territories. I am admittedly excited for Andor, coming later this year, because that's a character that we've only gotten to, interact with in one film. and we get to explore a side of the rebellion. Again, that we only really got to explore in stuff like Rebels, but now we get to take it into live action. And Diego Luna was wonderful in Rogue One, so I'm excited to see that. And I have also heard that Andor is actually going to be doing a lot more on-location shooting than any other Star Wars series has in the past few years. They're abandoning that weird like green screen tube that they've been using. Yeah. So I appreciate that, because visually that could bring it closer to feeling like a traditional Star Wars movie without having to rely on traditional Star Wars storytelling and characters. But I am most excited for Taika's movie because just try something completely new. Throw a few TIE fighters in there because obviously, but new characters, new planets, something completely different. The books dared to take the stories further than Disney has yet, so it's possible. Okay, it's time to start wrapping things up. Final thoughts. Miles, what are your final thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I'm thumbs up. There was enough great stuff there to justify the casing, and I'm perfectly okay with it. So the time spent with Ewan and Hayden was magical. I feel like we shouldn't have even been there, so it's all worth it to me.
Kyle, your final thoughts.
I do like that sentiment that it seemed like we're peeking into the past, that like there's no reason that this should be here. So that is cool. But I do think that it was dragged down so much by losing sight of the narrative. As Sarah said, it should have been a character study of Kenobi. His name is in the title, not these generic refugees that we don't care about. But yes, there was, ultimately it's a good time. You see some really cool moments, and I enjoyed it. I look forward to it every week. But because they had to spread it out over 6 parts, they ended up detracting from the best moments.
Finally, Sarah, your final thoughts.
I would also agree. I loved it. I really enjoyed watching it, and there was a lot of stuff that I'm really glad I got to see, and it wasn't perfect. There was definitely some slow moments, but overall it was the good stuff made it worthwhile.
I still can't believe we have now on footage, or it exists, a moment of Vader screaming Obi-Wan with Hayden and James Earl Jones's voice modulating. Like, that exists now. That is so cool.
It exists.
He's trying to prove himself still.
Yeah. It exists, and it feels so much more earned than the classic no from The Revenge of the Sith.
Oh.
And while this show is, as Sarah said, not perfect, it's good enough, and it does enough to renew my faith after the Book of Boba Fett, which was rough. I'll leave it at that. Watch that episode; it's rough. All right.
I still haven't watched that series. Should I just skip it?
No, there's 2 episodes you have to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you intend to keep up with The Mandalorian, you kind of have to watch the Book of Boba Fett. And by kind of, I mean, yes, you have to.
You
My
have
showtime
to.
is so precious. Then.
You have to eat your vegetables, Sarah. You got to watch it. Sorry.
And that leads us to trivia. This might be a tricky one because wasn't sure how I could stump you, so made it tricky. So, Obi-Wan premiered on Disney Plus on May 27th. This date is also the birthday of which Star Wars actor? Is it A, Ewan McGregor, B, Alec Guinness, C, Peter Cushing, or D, Christopher Lee? Does anyone know this off the top of their heads?
No.
Nope. All right, Miles, I'm going to go to you first.
I'll say Peter Cushing.
All right. Kyle, what do you think?
May 26th?
27th.
27th. I will also go with Peter Cushing.
And finally, Sarah.
I feel like somewhere in my brain is remembering some connection between this date and Christopher Lee's birthday. So I'm going to go with Christopher Lee.
Well, congratulations, Sarah. It is Christopher Lee's birthday. I will say it's a little tricky because Peter Cushing's birthday is literally the day before.
Oh.
So congratulations, Sarah. That puts you are at 4 points now. You're just one behind Travis and Jalen.
Close.
Do I have any points, Ben?
Miles, you have 3. You're doing all right. Kyle, you have 2. You're 2 for 3, and that's not bad. So no one is out of this race yet on this particular panel. I can't speak to a lot of other people, but you are all doing just fine. All right, so that has been episode 50 of the Sunday Matinee, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Thank you to Miles, Kyle, and Sarah for being here, especially considering, once again, 50 episodes. My goodness gracious. We've come a long way from, spending over 3 hours talking about Christopher Nolan. So at least we didn't go that long today. So I am not sure if I'm going to be coming back next week for an episode. I had something scheduled, but wouldn't mind taking a little time off and figuring out what the next batch of episodes should be, and really prepping, because I know we're going to do Miles, Stranger Things, Volume 2 episode, and I do hope that you and Kathleen will be back for that one.
We're in.
So until I get everything figured out, this is where we're at. Thank you, everyone, for watching, or if you're listening to this, thank you for listening. Get out there, enjoy your movies safely. And remember, Kyle came in costume for this one. Should remind him to show up for a Halloween episode, see what happens. So get out there, enjoy your movies safely, enjoy your streaming at home less safely because you're not out in public and being crazy with this pandemic, which is still going on amongst every other crazy thing in the world. But hey, have a good day, everyone.
And the force be with you.